Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this convention series webinar. I have James Musselwhite in the wings. Hi, James. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, mate. It's always good when you reply back to me. I knew I had you in the wings, but always that relief when they reply. So James, like I said, we're doing this in conjunction. We've invited you today to talk to us because we're one of the speakers at the Society's convention now in January. But what interested us was actually your portrait of a wrestler. We loved your creative portrait project, and that's what we're going to talk about effectively in today's webinar. But tell us a little bit quickly about you, James, as a photographer, how you got into it, and what you do as a photographer, as well as obviously these fantastic projects that you do.
Well, I've been shooting professionally full time now for 12 years. So I've been in the business sort of that long. But I guess I had my first camera when I was 14. My mum just got fed up of me banging on about wanting to take photos, and essentially it was a good option at school because we were still developing film, and because I was the only one doing photography in the art class, I got to for 2 hours every week, I got to lock myself away in a dark room and put a sign on the door that said teachers weren't allowed in. So it's a good way to sort of hide away really and just process some film and just do your own thing. Eventually sort of wanted to do sports photography, and that never really came off. I didn't have the kit or the finances behind me to do that, and so I just ended up doing a series of sort of dead-end jobs. I've pushed trolleys for Sainsbury's, I've made cold calls to people's homes for charity, and then I worked on an insurance for an insurance company working on their complaints line. And I remember about a year into the job, I had a rough morning on the phone, and I thought, well, that's okay because I've got lunch coming up soon. I started work at 8 o'clock. I thought, it's okay, I've got lunch at 1, so that'll be soon. That's about half an hour away. And I looked up at the clock, and the clock said 9:15. I'd literally been on the phone for just over an hour, and I thought I'd been there for about 4. And I thought, take myself away from this. Took myself to a little stairwell on the side of the building, have a little cry, and then I thought I've got to do something with my life that's actually enjoyable because I can't keep doing this. So went back to photography, relearnt it at evening school, and then at the age of 24, I got a trainee job within a studio at Fareham, big studio that was like a sausage factory, essentially just knocking out lots of 12 to 13 shoots a day. And they were so desperate for a photographer that they took me on with little or no experience of how to use a flash gun, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Brilliant, mate. Thanks for that. Well, great. We just wanted to give them a bit of an insight, but I know like today we're looking at your creative portrait products and how important they are to sort of keep you going as a photographer. James, I'm going to hand you the screen.
Well, my name's James. Thanks very much to everyone for joining us on this webinar. As Jay pointed out, we have people from all around the world, which actually is quite, I'm overwhelmed by that. So thank you very much for coming in to join me. This is a picture of me. As you can see, I'm in a box. The box represents a small space. It's literally a visual metaphor for one of my talks that's coming up in January, shooting in small spaces, and we'll come on to that in a minute. You'll see underneath there's my name, and then there's Closer Photography and Portrait of a Wrestler. They represent the two arms of my photographic business. Closer Photography was set up in 2009, dealing in sort of everything photographically. And 2 years ago, we set up Portrait of a Wrestler, which is my side creative project. I think creative projects are really, really important to photographers, no matter how new you are to the business or how long you've been in the business, to actually get out and do something creative that potentially may not make you any sort of financial gain. It's really important. It's important to keep you relevant. It's important to keep you fresh. It's important to keep trying new ideas and keep, daring to fail, I guess, is the thing. Only without sort of without the fear of failure can you progress. Those people who fear failure, they don't try new things, they don't progress, they don't develop as photographers. If you develop as a photographer, if you take better images, you will sell more images in your day-to-day work, and I'm a real believer of that. But for now, I'm just going to answer 5 questions that get asked quite a lot on seminars such as this. I shoot Canon and Olympus a little bit. I shoot Canon cameras. I've shot Canon cameras because when I was 14, my mum bought me a Canon camera. That's the only reason. I'm not sponsored by Canon. I'm not sponsored by Olympus. Neither of those big, massive conglomerate companies know who I am. So I'm not here to advocate anyone. I shoot Canon because I've shot it since I was a teenager. I know how it works blindfolded, and I shoot a Canon 5D. I shot a Canon 5D Mark II up until 2 weeks ago when it actually broke down on me after I'd been using it for 3.5 years. I've now upgraded to a Canon 5D Mark III. I just like what I know. Last year for Christmas, for a little bit of a treat for myself, I bought an Olympus OMD EM10. which is a beautiful little camera. I wanted to use it basically for my own personal use, so when I'm out with the kids or when I'm on holiday. I've been on 2 holidays since I purchased it, and I haven't taken it on either, and I just keep using my phone. But I do love the Olympus, and I've used the Olympus as part of my Portrait of a Wrestler project because it's so small, because the lenses are so small, it goes in a tiny little bag, and I don't have to cart loads of stuff around. If I was to start now, I would probably look at the Olympus as or any of those sort of smaller 4/3 cameras to sort of maybe extend my kit from there, because they are lighter and the quality you get out of them is awesome. But I'm only an advocate for them. I'm not paid by either of those companies. With regards to lights, I use Elinchrom D lights in the studio. My first set of D lights were D Light 2s, and they were purchased for me back in 2007 in lieu of payment for a job that I did for someone on New Year's Eve. Someone was hosting a New Year's Eve party. I said, oh, look, don't give me money, but if you buy me the lights that I can use to photograph your guests as they come in, then we'll call that a payment. And I'll use those D lights for a few years, and then I just literally upgraded to the D Light 4s. I'd love to get my hands on more expensive lights. I'd love to use more expensive lights, but I can't afford it. I can't justify it. And I quite like the way the D lights work. So this entire project, this entire Portrait of a Wrestler project, and all of my studio work comes from Elinchrom D lights. I work from home. I work from a loft conversion that we have up here in a terraced house and right in the centre of Portsmouth. I use lenses. I use lots of lenses. There's different lenses for different needs. There's not one sort of super duper answer to the what lens do you use question. Just use any lens I can get my hands on. I've got my personal favourites, but trial and error, and only by trying with creative projects do you learn which lenses you really, really like. And lastly, my wife is definitely my boss. My wife is in charge of the business. She's in charge of the accounts. She's in charge of the finances. She's in charge of the bookings, and she's in charge of the diary. I am literally the monkey with the camera. When the business started, when we started Closer Photography, when I came out of the, I alluded to it earlier, I was a trainee photographer, a high street photographers in Fareham, not far from where I live now in Portsmouth. I left that job and then went on my own after we purchased this property because we knew that the loft conversion would work. At that time in 2009, we were literally taking on everything and anything photographically that people would pay us for. It's difficult when you start a new business. It's difficult to know sort of where to start and how to market, and the onus is on you. And I remember having a figure on the wall every month that I knew I needed to get to pay my mortgage, to pay my bills, and to put food on the table. And every time I made an order or made a booking, then I'd take a little bit off that figure until I got down to zero, and then everything else was in profit. It seems like a rudimentary way to do it, but it was something that just kept me motivated, and I knew exactly where I stood with it and how it worked from there. Weddings were a big deal to begin with, because obviously you get one lump sum, but we'll come on to weddings later on in a minute. I always just try to shoot weddings in my first question when I shot weddings to the clients was, what do you want from me? A lot of the more established wedding photographers will tell you that you're the expert and that you need to import your expertise on them and tell them how the wedding day's going. I like to do a bit of both, and what would sort me the most success was when I actually listened to my clients and asked them what they wanted and just try to fulfill that as much as possible. We did corporate jobs. This particular image in the middle is a guy called Richard who's kayaking around the UK for charity. We got in with a prosthetics company there, and for any of their corporate shots that they need, they employ us for that. But there's a range of corporate shots that we do, from like corporate headshots in businesses and things like that. And then lastly, portraits in studio. And we were shooting everything for the first few years. We were shooting everything from babies to bumps to families to toddlers to generation shoots to pets and to everything else. In the last year or so, we've streamlined this business down. The wedding market has shifted so far away from the ideals that we have with regards to it that we can't justify time out of the studio to shoot them at weekends and then to edit them later on in the week. And when we actually broke the costs of the wedding down against the money that we got back in from it, we decided that it wasn't profitable. I'm a husband. I've got 2 very young children under the age of 4, and just at this particular time in my life, I just value time over business. So the decision to drop weddings in the last 2 years has been a fairly simple one to take, although we're still obligated to the weddings that we put 2 years ago. The corporate jobs we keep on because they're so few and far between, provided they excited us. That's the thing that we wanted to do. But the portrait side of things has dramatically shifted. We are now exclusively a bump to baby studio. These are all images that were shot in our studio in the last calendar year. And we pretty much look after our clients from the moment that they have a bump to the moment that their baby's born, and then use marketing to get them back in for when that baby is sort of 1 year and beyond. We still have great referral schemes with our clients. People still come back to us. But we like to try and maybe stay away from the twee stuff with babies, stay away from props, stay away from the Ann Geddes look, stay away from sort of just using babies as props to mount on other props. We try and get a little bit of character. Love the crying shot in the bottom left-hand corner. I've got a whole little folder of those. There's something about a crying kid and a crying baby that sort of I just think it's just raw emotion. It's the emotion that as adults in adult life we condition ourselves against, and I think babies don't have that. If they're hungry, they're going to let you know, and I think it's kind of cool. But it's lovely to see this process, and it's lovely to see the ladies go through from bump to baby. So from Monday through to Saturday in the studio every week, we fill our diary up with bumps, babies, and previews. This is my studio space, and this is the studio space I not only use for these portraits, but this is the studio space I used for Portrait of a Wrestler. This is the loft conversion. 14 foot wide by 14 feet long. In the middle there is a 1 meter section. If you can see my mouse pointer, it is here. It is just shy of 1 meter wide and it's just over 2 meters in height. Outside from that, the roof slopes, so you can't really use it for any studio space. Your studio space is here. It's this channel. We can't come too far back this side. I stand this side and then sort of shoot this way generally. Do have the option to use window light here, but I only use 2 lights. These are my 2 Elinchrom D lights, and I only have 3 modifiers. I have a small softbox, a larger softbox, and then a small little modifier on a silver reflector that I stole that idea from Rankin when I went to go and see him shoot in London. We have a variety of chairs over here that we can use for different posing pouches. This particular one here is quite interesting. This is a low chair for helping mums who've just had babies to sort of breastfeed and to change, because it's very, very low. So particularly for anyone who's had any sort of C-section or anything like that, it's actually a more comfortable chair for them to sit on. But we also have the couch over here. This is my workstation over here. The most important thing about this workstation over here is 2 screens. Blokes seem to like that and seem to go mad for the fact that I've got 2 screens, which is awesome. You can't see this up here, but there's a rail up here which we've built into the wall, which has Velcro attached to it. So instead of purchasing an expensive roller that we would put across there that would roll different backgrounds down, we literally put a couple of plinths of wood up there, attach Velcro to it, and then over here are all of my backgrounds which also have Velcro attached to them and are cut to fit. So they stick along the back. My black one is just there and it stretches from all the way down here to all the way down here, so I have a nice big black background to use. Got the fan in case you want to do any dramatic shots. Got our IKEA stools to keep kids happy. Got our suitcases for the twee shots that sometimes mums insist on for their baby shots. The sofa for our previews comes round into the middle of the room here. And then down here there's a boxed-in blind, essentially, that we bought from IKEA. This box comes up, the blind comes up, attaches to a screw in the wall up here, and then the projector table comes out from here and projects the images on there for our slideshows, and that's how we do our previews. For those interested, we use Animoto slideshow software, and I think we use Portrait One for our sales software there. So that's how the studio works in terms of our bump to babies, and it's also how our studio works for Portrait of a Wrestler. Now the reasons why we would do Portrait of a Wrestler, why we'd take a creative project on and why we would just jump into it, are quite varied, but they're fairly simple. I always want to learn. In photography, the beauty of it is not only is it a really, really sort of fun way to earn a living, it's also a thing that you can never really stop learning from. Whenever I do seminars and try to teach the way that I shoot, I try and strip it back as much as possible. I think there's a trap that some particularly new photographers fall into, is that they want to learn how to use 12 lights all at once, as many lights as they can with as many modifiers and as many different ways of doing things and complicate things without understanding how one light works. You can see in my studio setup there that I've got 2 lights. For the majority of my shoots, even for the babies and the bumps, I'm using 1 light, sometimes with a reflector, so you technically have 2 light sources. But I pride myself on being able to strip it back and still being able to do sort of challenging portraiture, but in a really, really simple way. And I think provided you can do that, and it took me 6 years to learn that, because I was in a franchise studio before where we were pushed to be creative and pushed to use as many light sources as possible and pushed to challenge ourselves. And it was only by coming out of that environment that I learned that I really needed to understand how one light worked before I could really understand how that many worked. When you learn, you develop. And you develop your style, and you develop yourself into different areas of business, the photographic business, that I would never have seen before. It's a challenge to myself. The Portrait of a Wrestler series was initially set up so that I could achieve my fellowship within the Master Photographers Association and the societies, the SWPP. I like a challenge. I'm a member of a running club, and the first thing I ask new members is what's your goal? You can't just take on, so in that regard, for an athletic pursuit, you can't just take on something and not have a goal. If you don't have a goal, you've got no direction and nowhere to go. With the running club example, it can be, I want to run a 5K. That's great, we can get you there. With this particular challenge, it was, I want to achieve my fellowship. And if I can't achieve my fellowship, then I want to know why I didn't achieve it and what I can do to get there. Otherwise, the project's entirely directionless. It also helps you stay motivated. When you're shooting babies and bumps day in, day out in the studio, it can sometimes take a bit of time. It can sometimes be quite mundane if you don't challenge yourself. This Portrait of a Wrestler series has opened me up to a new way of shooting. It has opened me up to different styles and different ways of doing things. And it's allowed me to bring that back into my bump to baby stuff, even only in a small way, which has allowed me to create different images and to work in different ways. The project started, to go on to the project started at the beginning of last year. That's when I decided that I wanted to sort of go for the fellowships, and I didn't really know where to start. I am a wrestling fan, but I'd been to more shows at that point in America where the WWE, the big company, is based. And I didn't really know a lot about UK wrestling or UK wrestlers. It was only by reading the newspaper and finding a news article on a guy called the Fearless Flatliner, and he overcame surgery for a series of medical issues he had to sort of overcome. I read his article and it kind of struck me, and he looked like an interesting character. So I literally called up the paper and said, can I have his number? And they got me in contact with him from there. This is him. This is the Fearless Flatliner. You can take that image for a little view there. As you can see, I said he's an interesting guy. I mean, he came across in the newspaper article. There was a photo of him there, but you can see there with the piercings, the bleached goatee, the bleached beard. He's a big guy, works out of the gym, the bald head, the aggression. It just screams character. This was shot in the studio, high key setup. So 2 lights set up on this, one in front, just slightly to the left, just above the subject in a big softbox, and then we just backlight it against that white wall, so we've got the nice high key look. No real photoshopping, not looking to really remove any blemishes from these guys. We want to make them look as rough and as ready due to the nature of the sort of wrestling side of things, I guess. We met Chris at a show before we did the shoot, and I took a few examples of my work and examples of what I wanted to do with it, and the guy was on board immediately. His job is he wrestles in the evenings, and his job during the day is he's a waiter at TGI Fridays. No word of a lie. So if you visit TGI Fridays anywhere in and around the Fareham area, chances are you'll meet him, and he sings "Happy Birthday" to the kids, and gets special requests to do so. Genuine, true story. So when he came into the studio, he was our first wrestler. We just wanted to sort of get to know him and to experiment on a few things. There was no fee for this session. Sometimes you'll hear photographers say, I will never work for free, I will never do it for nothing. Sometimes you just have to. If it's a project you're passionate about, if you just want an in, sometimes you just have to say, yeah, no, I'm going to do this, complimentary, and this is my in. Chris was open up to absolutely loads of ideas, which was really sort of fantastic, and we got to experiment on them a lot. So the first shoot lasted somewhere between an hour and a half. When he came around, we made sure the studio was spotless. We made sure we offered teas and coffees. We had little snacks and everything on board, and we made sure to treat him just like any other client that we would have coming in the studio, because we wanted to give as good and a professional look of ourselves as much as possible. perception is reality, and that's a thing I'm going to keep coming back to. And it's a little saying that I sort of that really means a lot to me in business. And the way that people perceive you, no matter what the reality is behind it, but the way that people perceive you is the way they'll talk about you and what they think of you. We experimented with Chris, as you'll see from here. A little bit of low key, a little bit of high key, lots of edgy stuff on the right with, using structure and contrast in post-processing, but really not a whole heap of Photoshop work involved in that. The one shot on the left again is shot with a black background, and it's shot on a single light source with the light slightly round and behind, a sort of rim lighting effect. And you can just sort of pick up that detail there in the ears and the studs, and sort of tells its own story, I guess. The one in the middle, that is dry ice. The only bits I would Photoshop on that are in the small corners if I just want the dry ice to fill in, but that is genuine dry ice that's been blown in to Chris in the studio. This is one of the few things that, this is one of the many things that we've managed to sort of drag across into our bump pictures especially. And if a subject's up for it, then they can get kind of like a cool effect when we sort of blow dry ice around a bump and do it sort of rim lit and make it kind of subtle, and it's a bump picture that sort of makes us stand out from sort of generic ones that people will bring along on their phones in Pinterest. So it is something that's transcended across into our day-to-day work. The one in the middle that we shot, I like the symmetry on it, and it's actually the one that we used in the panel in the end, spoiler alert. But Chris enjoyed the shoot so much, he went back and he was already telling people about it, and then we were already sort of getting requests. Oh, I hear you're doing a project, can I be a part of it? We went a step further though, and we made sure that a week after Chris was shot, we got some fine art prints done, we put them in nice folders, and we just sent them in the post to him with a handwritten letter, just wishing him well and thanking him and wanting him to stay in contact. And we're still in contact with him to this day. That just going that little extra mile means that when he recommends you, it comes with a seal of approval. And there's a saying that it's not what you know, it's who you know, and I don't believe that's true. I believe it isn't what you know, and it isn't really who you know. It's who you know who's willing to put their reputation on the line for you. I know a lot of people who haven't recommended me, who have had the opportunity to, but haven't, because they're not willing to sort of risk their own sort of word, if that makes sense. But if you go the extra mile with these people, and if you just look after them, then they will sort of recommend you even more highly, and you tend to get people's buy-in a little quicker and a little easier. How are we doing on questions there, Jay?
Yeah, we've got a few coming through. Some of them are sort of kind of generic, but let me just, where is it? There we go. Right, sorry, somebody just questions just jumped because a few more came through. Okay, so somebody just came through about the dry ice. How much trouble is it to work with, and is it easy to store and use?
Now, okay, so the machine is about 12 to 16 inches long by about 10 inches wide. I literally stick it under my desk, it's here. The key to the dry ice is what fluid you put in it, because some of it rises, some of it sits, some of it's thick, and some of it's thin. So you just got to work out which dry ice works for you. You can normally find that information online. The dry ice machine I found on eBay for less than 20 quid. So in terms, once again, it's not one of these aspirational things whereby like, oh, I wish I had that, I wish I could afford that light, I wish I could afford that piece of kit. It's less than 20 quid, and it just adds that little bit of something extra to the shoot.
Brilliant. I'm not quite sure if I got this question right. I was answering a question about the society, so I'll read it to you. They missed where you were talking about software you used for ordering. Can you just remind them what it was?
Oh, for ordering? No. Okay. Yeah. No. It's. I think it's Portrait One for the sales software for our bump to baby.
Right, I'm with you. I'm back on. Yeah, and you said you were an Animoto user as well. And,
I'm a
yeah.
big advocate of Animoto, big advocate of using the right music for bump to baby. We have an 80% hit ratio in our studio of making new mums cry. This is a weird thing about this business as well. In photography, particularly social portraiture, you have to do two things you don't have to do in any other job. You have to apologize for doing a good job, because people are like really resentful because you've gone, oh my God, not too good a job, I'm going to have to spend some money. And it's a good thing when people cry. If you build a wall for someone and they start crying when they see it, you've probably done a bad job. But with photos, I find that when they cry, it's a good thing.
Oh, it's an absolutely great thing, mate. We know we're on a winner when we've seen that client cry, and
Absolutely.
massive advocates of Animoto. We love it, and we actually get a discount. So anybody wants a discount on Animoto, you can find that via.
It transformed our business overnight, Animoto, and I've told them that, and they've still given me nothing for free. But anyway,
And likewise, well, we're getting that sorted maybe, mate. But no, they're really good with us. But we found them, used them, and thought they were fantastic.
cool.
Dry ice, RE dry. Oh god, it's all lighting up now, James. We might have to hang on to a few for the end. Let's stay on dry ice. Was it a smoke machine, or is it actual lumps of frozen CO2?
It's just a smoke machine,
It's
just
just
like they'd use at a school disco.
real. I think I noticed that the reveals the clients down to be done 5%. Yeah, I think
I'll move on. Oh, go
yeah,
on.
I think we better add. I'll sift through these and we'll yeah.
Yeah,
I
sit
think
through those. I'll move on because I'm going on to our next guy now.
all right, mate, you can do it.
Cheers. So this is Flatliner. So the first guy Flatliner recommended us to was the guy who runs the training school that is literally 400 yards around the corner from where I live. So this is once again part of the problem. When I sort of started to research the wrestling industry, there wasn't like the details of the federations are there, but there's hundreds of them. You don't know which are the good ones, which are the bad ones, and the contact details aren't that great. And when I was emailing ones that were in the Portsmouth area, I wasn't getting emails back. Since being in and around the wrestling industry, I sort of found out why that is, and I'll come on to that later. But
James, sorry to
Flatliner,
interrupt, James. Mate,
oh, go on.
have you moved the image on? Because I'm still seeing the three images of the same chap.
I'm about to move on now.
Ah, brilliant. That's okay. Just thought you'd already had.
Okay.
Just checking.
That's okay. That's cool. So Flatliner literally recommended us to this guy. This is Andy Simmons. Andy is, he won't thank me for saying this, but Andy's a veteran of the UK scene. He's been around since the 90s. Used to play a butler. That was his first gimmick. But now he flits between good guy and bad guy depending on what on what he does. So he came to the session and brought along a steel chair with a massive dent in it. And he said, I thought we could use this. And I said, what happened to it? And he said, oh, you obviously hit someone on the head. These things genuinely sort of happen, I guess, in wrestling. Once again, we're still at the experimental stage with Andy here because he's only our second shoot. High key on the left, similar to Flatliner's one, where he's sort of screaming off into the distance. And I thought, well, maybe that would be an interesting idea to do a panel of 20 of those sort of images. The one in the middle was shot. You can see from the catch lights in the middle of the eyes here that we've got two lights either side. I experimented with panoramic softboxes for these, and then realised I probably didn't need sort of 2-meter high panoramic softboxes when I'm just doing a headshot, and then sort of put them away, and I've never used them since. But you've got two catch lights either side of the eyes here, so you can see there's evenly lit either side. And we've used a neutral density filter on this photo. That's so that we can open up that aperture and get a nice soft sort of milky finish, I guess, to the to anything in the foreground or the background if we shoot it on a long enough lens. So I thought that might be an interesting to do 20 images like this where they're all just staring into the camera and they've all got different sort of gimmicks and different things going, different piercings, different facial features and all that kind of stuff. And then lastly, we finished off with the black and white one here, again with the dry ice down to the side. Pretty much a single light source setup again here. Maybe I think there was a reflector on this left-hand side. You'll forgive me for sketchy details on lighting because this image was shot 2 years ago. But I think there was a reflector on this side that's being held because you can see a tiny little bit of highlight just down the side of the arm here. But the main light source is over here. The catch light's on the right-hand side of the eye and it's sort of coming across here. The brilliant thing about getting Andy on board is that he's very heavily involved in the local, it's called Revolution Pro Wrestling, which is based in Portsmouth. They do most of their main shows in London, and they import a lot of talents in from Japan. Occasionally, the big talents who come in from Japan and come in from America come down to the training school in Portsmouth, and we have and there's the potential that we could have had access to them to photograph. But what was more important with Andy was we had access to his trainees. At any point in time, that school can have between 20 or 30 trainees with them, whether they're on their first week or whether they've been trainees for 2, 3, 4 years. Now, these guys have, never had, promo pictures done, never had that, and they were chomping at the bit to come and see us because they'd seen that Andy had them done, they'd seen that Chris had them done, and they wanted a piece of it. So the next step was quite simple. This is Daniel. Daniel's a former UK standard judo athlete. I think it's judo. I think they are judo players. I learned this during the Olympics. They are called judo players. Still experimenting with Daniel Crusher Curtis, as he's known. He's a big guy, but works as a doorman. The image on the left here, nice wide angle. We wanted it wide angle so we get the emphasis of this hands coming out to you. And my vision for this shot was to sort of, as if he was looking down a little kid in the front row at one of these family shows and using the hands as sort of like that crusher element, the sort of Crusher Curtis. But how can you not photograph? I mean, for me, this is portraiture shooting fish in a barrel. The guy's got a goatee beard. The guy's got a singlet. The guy's got, a piercing in his nipple. The guy's got this massive tattoo along the front of his chest. The guy's massive. The guy's got attitude. It's really hard to take a bad picture of him. The image on the right here was a more simple one, harking back to the one that we shot of Andy in the middle of the previous panel, staring straight into the image, but we've just cropped it slightly off to the right-hand side just to give it that sort of asymmetry, and we just had him just stroking his beard. This is a 2-light setup, light on the right-hand side, and then a kicker light down this side here, just coming from behind, just giving us a slight highlight along the back here. It's important in this shot, it was a series of about 12 to 15 shots where we actually just had him stroking the beard, actually physically doing it. We didn't place this hand here and say we'll just hold it up a little bit more. This was just a series of shots as he was just stroking his beard and just looking straight down the middle of that lens. After we shot Daniel, more trainees came, and they're different shapes, sizes, personalities, and you can see the diversity here. From Crusher Curtis to this guy who's also called Curtis Chapman, who was at the time doing his GCSEs, the youngest professional. He was billed as the youngest professional wrestler in the UK. Skinny as a rake, but just up for it and up for the challenge. And I wanted to make him. I said at the time, I want to make him look like Brock Lesnar. I want to make him look like this. Brock Lesnar's this huge UFC Ultimate Fighting Champion athlete. He's a monster. And I said, no, come on, wouldn't it be fun if we were trying to make you look like that? So we could play on the skinny thing, but hey, no, let's make it look like this. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog, and let's get that out of you. And he was just up for all of the ideas in this hilarious sort of amateur wrestling headband. I absolutely love that. Got James Castle here in the middle. The week before the shoot, James had a mohawk that was up to here, and then decided he was going to shave it off, and he turned up without it. And I thought he was coming with this big mohawk, and I just saw a profile picture, simple lighting, and that didn't happen. But bless him, he's got the piercings, he's got the tattoos, he's got a great look. He's got this dyed hair. This is once again, this is actually a sort of 3-light setup. I think I got an extra one of my old D-Light 2s out for this. So it's D-Light 4s either side, where you can see the sheen on the side of the arms here, just separating you from the background. But then with this catch light here, you can see there's a light just above him there for me, just lighting the subject from behind. It's quite a bit of a more defined look coming off the background there rather than blending in. On the right here is one of my favourite guys. This is Lord Gideon Gray, one of the Legion of Lords, along with a guy called Rishi Ghosh. We've since done promo videos with these guys. This guy, in the words of a wrestler called Rockstar Spud, who works in America, and I'm sure Lord Gideon Gray won't mind me saying this. Spud said, "What I like about this guy is he embraces the fact that he's ugly. He embraces the fact that he hasn't got a conventional look." I would never say that. I think he has a unique look. He certainly has a unique personality. He's a cracking guy to work with, and he just got it. The brilliant thing about this shoot is that this guy was so keen to come and see us, he broke his collarbone the week before and still kept the appointment. Luckily, he plays a lord, so we could put the tweed jacket on him, we could put all the gimmicks on him, the shirt, the waistcoat, and you didn't notice a thing. And the image that we used eventually in the panel of him is with him with a broken collarbone. It's a representation of what these guys actually do in the ring. They work through injuries, and they certainly shoot through them as well, which is a good thing. The next connection we made is this guy, Marty Skrull. This was a big one for us. Marty's affiliated to Revolution Pro Wrestling. He saw what the guys at the trainee school were doing, the trainees were getting, because everything was going on Facebook. We were just letting them have the images, put them on Facebook. All the profile pictures were changing to our photos. This guy at the time was the champion of Revolution Pro Wrestling. He held the belt. and he saw these profile pictures coming up. He's going, hang on, these trainees have got better profile pictures than me. I better get down there and see them. The key thing about getting Marty on board was that at the time he was on national TV weekly. On Sunday nights on Challenge TV, he would present a show called Wrestle Talk TV for an hour, so he had national exposure. We got him on board. He came down for a shoot, loved the images, loads of experimental stuff with Marty. And when his images went online, then we're starting to get a bit of not only national recognition, but national recognition not only amongst the wrestlers, but amongst the fans who watch the TV show and watch him perform, and also international recognition because the guy's wrestled abroad and knows a lot of people who work in mainland Europe, Japan, and America. Then all of a sudden, you start seeing your pictures are getting shared a little bit more. Once again, a lot of photographers will tell you, hold on to your images, don't give anything away. This project is all about getting stuff out there, getting known, and publicity. And I wanted the images to be shared as much as possible, so I just give myself up to it. This is a 2-light setup. First light up here, over here, just off camera, coming down onto Marty here. So very simple, sort of 45-degree across the face here, slightly above. You can see where the catch light is there. Simple softbox. And then we've got a backlight behind on a tiny little spot. That's my Rankin light that I stole from Rankin. I stole it. It's his idea. I stole it. And that's coming back against the back of his head, shooting towards the camera, which gives us this lovely rim light here down the side of the jacket and through the back. And what it also does is it backlights that dry ice. Very important on this shot that the dry ice is let out behind the subject rather than in front, so we got a nice clean shot in front and then lots of dry ice slightly out of focus behind. No Photoshop in here at all, no cutting anything out, nothing. This is all in camera. We then move on to Doug. Doug's a tough guy. Doug's like Andy, veteran, been around a bit, chartered surveyor by trade. And he has wrestled for one of the main promotions in America for a number of years. He's come back to the UK now, but when we shot Marty said, you've got to get Doug in. I've got Doug's number. I'll call him and get him down. And Doug literally came down to us and gave us an hour of his time to have promo shots. Whenever he was out in America, he'd fly the British flag, very much playing on the sort of like the posh British guy thing out there. So we used that. He brought that towel along. So that towel is literally stuck to the back wall of our studio. We've posed him in front of it, light across here, and a small kicker at the back there, just defining him from the background again. The key thing about getting Doug involved, again, international notoriety. His was the first picture that got tweeted that hit sort of over 25 retweets, I guess. I think it got around about 50 in the end when we released our first picture of him because he has so many followers on Twitter. Those followers then start following you, and then when you start uploading pictures, they start engaging and getting involved in that. And that is big picture stuff in terms of the project and in terms of making it beneficial. The last big connection we made is this guy. This guy's called Martin Stone. As we speak today, he now wrestles for the WWE in America in their main promotion under the character name Danny Burch, and he's essentially, hopefully this comes across in this photo, but he's like a lock, stock, and two smoking barrels, Cockney hard guy, big guy, yeah, just a big guy. Lots of attitude, and here we made the call. I think this was the decisive one as to where we went with this project. We went back to the high key style here on the left-hand side. Lots of use of structure, lots of use of contrast. This is a simple 2-light setup again, just the light coming from above and then the light backlighting against the back wall. And then we had the similar sort of style here, but low key. Kicker light on the right, and the light coming in from kicker light on the left-hand side here, sorry, and then the light coming across from the right-hand side here. And I think it was at this point we decided that we like the simplicity of the dark backgrounds, we like the way that the subject sort of blends into them, and we like the way that we could play around with contrast levels and structure levels and get some, really make it jump off the canvas at you, because that's what we wanted. We wanted impact, and we wanted something to look, something to really grab you by the throat. So that's where we knew we wanted to go forward with the project. And we also knew that the restrictions of our studio. If I can bring up the picture of the studio back just quickly, I'll see if I can do that, which I can. Not a lot of space here. We knew if we wanted to shoot full length, we'd have to do a lot of Photoshop and we'd have to shoot on a wide angle lens. As soon as you start shooting on a wide angle lens, you get distortion. So it's just accepting your limitations and working within them. So I knew the panel had to all be portrait style, and I knew it had to be sort of close-up shots, at the most half-length shots. But I wanted them to all sort of fit in as a set together. 20 images, all portrait style, all upright. All with this same color processing technique, all with the similar lighting style, and all with high contrast, and all with attitude and personality and character coming through. So that's where we work on refining a style. How are we doing for questions?
Mate, we've got loads of questions, but I know we've still got a lot to go through. So I think if we crack on, like I said, guys, please stay with us. We're not tied to the time. I will ask James all of your questions, and obviously we'll keep them into the recording as well. But I know you've still got quite a few images to share, so let's go for another good 10.
Let's go through. So as I said, upright portrait pictures on a low-key style with character coming through, and then the project becomes quite easy, so that when they come into the studio, you know what you're going to do with them, and you know how the lights work, you know how your area works, you're no longer experimenting, and everything's more streamlined. At this point, I could start bringing down people from London, where the main training schools are, but I could bring them down 3 or 4 at a time. So they'd all come and see me together in my tiny little studio. We'd cook them dinner if they'd come all that way, so after the shoot they'd have dinner with us. And you can literally knock out, 3 or 4 shoots in an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, because you know exactly what you want from them. You know how it works. It's more streamlined. It's more efficient. The guy on the left is a guy called Mark Seeley. He wrestles under the name Little Legs. He's a small person. He's got a CV as long as your arm. Harry Potter, all sort of major films. He's probably been in them, and most pantos as well. But the ultimate professional as well, because he'd been in so many photo shoots and on so many sets that when he came in, it was like, right, what do you want? And that was great, and that was so simple to work with. The guy in the middle is a guy called Wild Boar, a guy called Mike Hitchman. He's 5 foot and change. He's not the tallest guy, but he is built like you would imagine. He's Welsh, and he's built like you would imagine the hardest of Welsh tight head props to be built like. With the beard and the hair, it was just very simple. We just have a little squirty thing of water that you'd normally use in a greenhouse where you're sort of spraying your tomato plants. Spray that down the front of him. Nice sort of texture on the on the hair in front, and just have that attitude coming out straight into the middle of the camera. On the right is Pollyanna. She's a really talented female wrestler. She's just come back from a tour of sort of like Hong Kong and China and all around there. She had this wonderful idea of fantasy figures from computer games, video games. I think this is someone from Mortal Kombat, but I'm so ignorant to it, I don't know, I can't remember. It might be Final Fantasy. But once again, we had another female wrestler in who did like a load of Joker stuff. She came in and dressed up as a Joker and had the Joker makeup and a sort of like Joker swimsuit and all that sort of colour. And then when that goes on social media, something like Twitter, where people are sort of like obsessed with comic books and fantasy and sci-fi and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden, when that gets retweeted, it's getting retweeted out beyond the wrestling circle and beyond the photography circle. It's being retweeted to other people, and then your name is associated with that. Then we start creating a perfect storm. So we know how it works. I've called this part creating the perfect storm, because then you start getting in guys, you start inviting in guys that you want to work with and researching them a little bit. Like my seminars, when I do seminars and when I do live shoots, I don't get a model who's got a brilliant makeup artist and a brilliant hairstylist in hand with a beautiful dress, and then take her to a beautiful location with all of the time in the world, and then call it bridal photography and take beautiful images, because it's not representative of a wedding day. It's great to learn from, it's great to aspire to, it's great to be a perfectionist, but it's not the way that it works. Whenever I do a seminar, we try and bring it back, and we try and sort of like work within the confines. The seminar I'll be doing at the societies will literally map out my studio on a floor and say, right, this is the space we've got to work with, this is how we do these portraits. So we're restricting ourselves to more realistic sort of styles, because I know what it's like working from home or working in other people's front rooms. Creating a perfect storm is about literally doing that, though. It's about literally getting that idea and going, okay, this guy's going to fit the campaign, so we'll invite him in. This guy's got the tattoos. He's got his little gimmick sort of gas mask here. We're going to bring in the dry ice, and he's got the makeup as well, and he's got the beard, and you just got all these gimmicks and all these elements that it's really only a click of a button away because you've got your lighting down to a T. It's kind of easy to sort of create that, and that's where the standout images come from, when everything is right and everything's working in your favor. This guy Dominator runs a wrestling company called EWW down in Hastings. His partner's a wrestler as well, and he's given us access to all of his fantastic characters from down there. And this is one of my favorite images from the session. The guy, when he came into this, is a little story. When he came into the studio, he was the most charming man you could possibly wish to meet. Polite and gracious and just absolutely lovely. And we got him into character and we got his makeup on. And my 3-year-old son decided to climb the stairs up into the attic just to see if Daddy was okay. And I remember the look on his face as he sort of peered round. Saw this man growling into the camera, and he didn't come up to the studio for about 3 months after that. Bless him. But love Stu, and I love this shot. This next one here, this guy's called Jimmy Havoc. Jimmy is possibly one of the best minds for professional wrestling, not only in this country, but I think on an international sort of level. This guy understands psychology, he understands storylines, he understands how to work emotions, he understands how to work a crowd. The depth of thought that he gives to everything that he does is absolutely second to none, and that's why a guy who isn't your conventional shape, size or form to be a wrestler is so thoroughly successful around the UK. He for the last year at least, or certainly for longer than that, within Progress, which is the main wrestling body in London, he is the most hated man in that federation. The fans hate him, and in an age in wrestling where that's a really difficult thing to achieve because the curtain's been pulled and everyone knows how wrestling works, it's really hard to get people to genuinely hate you, and that only happens when a guy is so in tune with his character and understands psychology so well that it comes across and just works. I knew exactly what we wanted to do with Jimmy. Little story from Jimmy's session. I said, right, we did the first few shots, and I said, come on, Jimmy, we're going to do some blood. And I reached down into my drawer down here and went to go and get this big bottle of fake blood that I've got. And as I looked round over my shoulder, I realised that he was reaching out into his bag to go and get a razor blade. I said, there's really no need for you to do that for me, mate. This is all fake blood. He's in no harm whatsoever. We've worked with Jimmy so many times since, and he's an absolute joy to work with. And the attitude and the character that comes across with him is just second to none, and I hope to work with him a lot in the future. The last one I'm going to show you, sort of highlighting this perfect storm. This is Jinx. Jinx is a hotel manager. There you go. Jinx isn't a hotel manager. The guy who plays Jinx is a hotel manager. But Jinx would love to tell you about this portrait. He'd love to say how great it is, but unfortunately, Jinx's character is a mute. He doesn't say anything, does no promos, doesn't say anything in the ring, and that's why he's got his finger to his lips there. When Jinx came in, he's a big guy, he's a veteran again, he's been around a bit, and he was absolutely charming. Came in with his partner for the shoot, and he took about half an hour to get the jester's outfit on and to get the makeup on, and I cannot tell you how in character that guy got in our shoot. He came up the stairs into the studio and he was just a mute. I would gesture to him and tell him where to stand and what to do. This costume's got bells on it, so all you could hear was just these sort of bells sort of jingling around. He had a cane that sort of shot out like a magic trick. He's just a performance artist, and he just got it. And everything we shot of him was absolute gold. One of the finest characters working in UK wrestling today, in my opinion. Another guy who just generates, particularly from children, that sort of that bad guy attitude. You know, they hate him, and there's a weird atmosphere when he makes his way to the ring. Again, dry ice here. This is a real simple lighting setup. There's one light behind. You can see a tiny little bit of highlight just underneath the horn here, and then that backlight also, and along the glove here. But what that backlight is mainly doing is lighting up the dry ice in front, and then a simple light source from above here. We're slightly low on the angle here because we want him, like we did with the first picture of Crusher, we want to make it look like he's looking at a kid, looking at a fan, and he's got that. If you shoot guys from down low, they look domineering, and it just gives it a slightly different touch to the picture, I guess. The submission ended up looking like this. So going back to when we said we were going to, stick on a style, we kind of did. We produced 20 images that were all portrait. They're all 3x2. all on a mixture of all mainly low key, but some plain dark backgrounds like this one here of Marty with the belt, some with the dry ice, but there's an even split among them. And you'll see again that we sort of stuck to that mantra of they're either headshots or they're sort of half-length shots. So we haven't tried to do anything we can't physically do in the studio. We've just understood our limits, stuck with them, and moved forward with it. Everyone in here is a mixture of like trainees who've only just started, like Luke up here, to guys who've been around the industry, you know, for years, like Dominator and Doug over here. Jordan's an interesting one. I'll tell you a very quick story about Jordan. He calls himself Buff Daddy. That's what his tattoo says here. You'll see here on Jordan, he's got 2 scars here. Jordan doesn't have a single memory before his 8th birthday because he was involved in a motorcycle accident. I really wanted just to highlight that in the photo, but I just thought that was just the most fascinating thing that you don't. So many of my memories and nostalgia, and like, I was just watching the Star Wars trailer yesterday, and just the music, it just resonates with you because you just remember sort of being a kid sat on the living room floor sort of watching that, and it didn't quite compute with me. But Jordan's a lovely guy, and had a great look for the project. Of course, Pastor William Eva here, unconfirmed as yet, but my second talk at Societies on the Sunday will involve some of the wrestlers. Pastor William Eva is an unconfirmed guest, and you'll have the opportunity to photograph a real-life wrestling man of the cloth, if you wish. But yeah, no, you're a lovely guy, and still in contact with us to this day. This is the panel we printed. What happens with this process, with the MPA and with the societies, is you have to produce 20 by 16 prints of each individual image. That's 20 by 16 prints. What going through this process teaches you is not only how important print quality is, but it teaches you about finding the right printer for you, finding the right paper for your project, because different paper handle blacks and tones differently, and you have to do test prints and work out what it is. But it also teaches you negotiation skills and skills of learning to work with printers and how to, you know, sort of negotiate to a happy medium. They're quite important skills when going forward in business. So this whole thing was, you know, we were getting a database of wrestlers, a database of clients. We were working social media, social networking, getting people on board with the project to give it a bit more notoriety, and we were working with suppliers that were practically going to help us with our actual business of shooting babies and bumps going forward. The submission itself, for the MPA, I produced this box here at the top. Because it's a fellowship, it's the highest award you can achieve. My opinion is you can't half-arse it. You can't just take 20 of your best images and hope you're going to pass it. The best fellowships are projects. They're single theme projects. And you have to do a little bit extra. This entire book was made, stuck, printed by ourselves and mainly by my wife who's down here. We used note paper, found a font that worked, printed 5 copies of it for each of the 5 judges. We stitched the outside of it with a colour and a format that worked for us. This portrait of a wrestler at the front here, you see this here printed onto fabric. That was done by individual letters. We had to print little individual stamps for each letter. We had to do that 5 times. The box represented a wrestling ring. It had 3 wrestling ropes going around the outside of it. That was made by my Uncle Stuart. We just literally gave him the dimensions as they go away. Would you mind please making that for us? There's hinges on it and it would open up. And I just think when you go into a room and you've got your panel up on the wall, but if you can come in with something that's a little bit different, that invokes quality, invokes thought, invokes care, it gives you that, it has to play in their minds. Judges have to be objective, but that's almost impossible. And anything you can do in your favor to help, you know, help your case in terms of your submission can help. So we put a lot of effort into this working profile, which contains all of the images in small format, plus a little bit of detail about me and the project itself. The panel passed the MPA fellowship first time, also passed the society's first time in January, which we were very, very sort of pleased about. So we now hold a fellowship with both associations. I've read a lot of forums, I've read a lot of online threads from maybe people who are a little cynical with regards to qualifications and what they're worth and what they actually mean. As with anything in life, it means what you want it to mean. And if I took my fellowship and I ran with it, and then when I got it, I made it mean something. I promoted it in the right way. I contacted people in the right way. I kept people in the loop in the right way. I made it with my blog posts and everything. I made it mean something. If anyone, and with regards to blog posts and the way that you blog, if anyone here is a wedding photographer, your blogs are so important to wedding photography. And I read so many blogs that are generic. So many blogs that talk about a beautiful day with a gorgeous bride in a stunning dress with a delightful location on a lovely summer's evening. And they all read the same from bride to bride. If you go to my website and read my wedding blogs, I'll try and find something from that day that was personal and different, a little story, something that people can latch onto, something that gets more shares online because it's interesting, because it's a funny story, or because it's emotive. One of my wedding guests, one of my wedding grooms had neither of his parents could be at the wedding, so they melted down the rings that they passed on to him after they passed away, so that he could make one wedding ring out of it for himself. So every day he wears the wedding ring that his mum and dad had. How is that not more an interesting story than just generic words about a day? And it engages you more with people and it makes it mean something. And for God's sake, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but for God's sake, if I see another blog again that says, this is the best wedding I've ever shot, I'm going to go crazy, because God knows what your other clients think of that. It can't be the best wedding you've ever shot. They're all different, and it's insulting to the guests that you've previously shot to say that. So I just want to get that off my chest. Oh, God, I've gone on a rant. I promised I wasn't going to do that. The rewards of doing a fellowship are taking better pictures leads to making more money, and that's a fact. If you're learning, if you're developing a style, if you're taking better pictures, clients are going to find it harder to say no to them. And provided you can transfer that into your day-to-day work that makes you money, then you'll make more money because you sell more pictures because your pictures are better. Simple. You learn the value of the printed image, and once again, that transfers itself to the client. It's hard enough to sell prints when they know they can get prints for 5p from Asda. So it's really important to learn the value of the printed image, to put that across to your clients, to say, this is why my wall art is so expensive. Because I use, in my case, I use the Print Foundry, and I've been to their studios, and I know how their printing works, and I know what paper they use, and I know what paper Asda use, and this is why it's different. Understanding the use of social media for profit. So many people say, oh, I just don't get Twitter, I don't know. And if you think you're just going to join Twitter tomorrow and then in 2 days' time have a load of leads, it doesn't work like that. My Twitter is an ongoing process. It's a long-term project, and I've only just started to see the rewards from it. But then that reward will be tenfold later on down the line. So it's all long-term gain, really. And making connections that sort of transcend the projects. And what I mean by that is real simple. One of the guys I shot runs a business. I was asked to take headshots for his business because I've taken great shots of him as a wrestler. Another one of the guys I shot has invited me to shoot his wedding next year, even though I said I wasn't going to shoot weddings. I'm making an exception for him. But I got a wedding out of it. So you might say, oh, this project's costing you money. And that's not necessarily the case. You can make money to you. Once you're done with your panel, I mean, my panel occasionally comes around with me so I can get it out for sort of seminars so I can show people, but you can't, with my previous projects, I've sold the panel back to the clients because all of a sudden it's an award-winning panel. Well, why wouldn't they want a fine art print from it so they can go on their wall and they can say, yeah, I was part of an award-winning project. There's ways to make money back out of the project almost immediately. Moving forward, and I'll move through this very quickly because I know that we're very, very close to the end. It's important, again, I've never wanted to bench this project, but I've never wanted just to continue doing the low-key black and white stuff that got us the fellowship. So moving forward, we've continued to experiment, and these are just 3 ways in which we've experimented just recently. Because we got in with the wrestlers and because they started to know us, we got invited backstage to shows. I've never wanted to shoot ringside. I just lay that on the table. I wouldn't know where to stand. I'd get in the way. I'd be a complete disaster. These shots were taken at a show in London. They were taken backstage. They were either using natural light from a door that was open behind me, or when it got dark outside, I just pulled out my ice light and stuck it on top of a tripod. This is called Beyond the Curtain. These were all images of wrestlers taken within 1 minute of them finishing their match and coming back through the curtain. I didn't ask a single one of them to pose. I just asked them to stand there. This isn't them acting. This is how much pro wrestling hurts. This is how much they give in that ring. It's a performance. It's predetermined. It's a show. but it's an athletic spectacle, and it's one that they put their bodies on the line for, and that's what I want to try and replicate in this project, which is, once again, an experimental project, but it's important to experiment and do something different. The next show, these are, I suppose, fairly graphic images. This is after a death match. A death match is one where you sort of use, I don't know, in this particular instance, I think it was like drawing pins and light tubes and things in the ring between these two competitors who just had a match. I just brought my flashlight along. Once again, no black backdrop, but we're just getting them just after the match, and we just want something that's raw, something that's real, and something that's different. Because of the success of the project, we were granted this backstage access, and I think these are two of the most powerful pictures that I've taken so far on the panel. I should have put a warning up before I put them out. I apologise. And then lastly, we've started to now move on to where we can start to make a bit of profit from the project. This is our first attempt at that. This is we've taken some popular wrestlers from the UK scene, and we're trying to do movie crossovers. And the premise of it is this: we take a potentially British film, but we're probably going towards more cult films now because there aren't enough cult British films. Take some wrestlers, make them up in it, and then take a picture of it and sell it online. We paid for the makeup artist, we paid for the shirts, we paid for the braces, we paid for the travel, and we paid for the prints. The 4 guys got on board because they've been on board with us all the way through from the project. And then when we got the pictures printed A3, we took them down to the next show, which we knew they would all be at, and we got them all to sign a copy for our project. And then that started to sell online. As it stands, out of 100 limited edition prints, we have 2 left, and they only went on sale, I think, 2.5 weeks ago. All of a sudden, you know, the project, which is just a little idea that I had a couple of years ago, is now becoming a viable business where we can sort of put prints up online and sort of give something back to the wrestling fans who actually want something up on the wall, and actually give something back to us for the work that we're producing. In summary, this is kind of what I've taken away from the project. It's important not to let experience inhibit your creativity. There's a guy in wrestling called Paul Heyman who says that the experience is the greatest inhibitor of creativity going, because when you're experienced, when you've been around the block a bit, all you've taught yourself is what not to do, and you stay away from it. And I found myself 2 years ago doing that. I found myself in my portrait sessions knowing exactly how to get good shots of a baby, how to get good shots of a family, and just doing it and just treating it like a sausage factory, because I was experienced enough not to try different things because I didn't want to fail. And it's important to just put your head above the parapet and go, no, I'm going to give this a go, and if it doesn't work, that's cool, I'll learn from it and just try different things. There is absolutely no substitute for hard work in terms of success, in terms of creative projects like this and gaining qualifications or starting a new business, or just in terms of your business in itself. Nothing in this industry lands on your lap, and that comes on to the last point, that no one wants to do it for you. Photography at times can be a really, really lonely thing. You're working on your own. A lot of the time you see your clients for an hour, but they're not around afterwards. I used to work in a busy studio where we had 12 members of staff, and now it's just kind of like me and my wife, which isn't a bad thing, but you don't get that day-to-day thing. You have to get out and do it yourself in this industry. You have to find your projects. You have to ask people to help you out, and if you want to do it, it's all well and good sitting at your desk and shrugging your shoulders and say, yeah, I'd love to do something like that. Sometimes you just need that motivation. You just need that impulse to sort of get out and do it. I've overrun terribly. I'm really sorry.
James, it's absolutely no problem, and most people have stayed with us, as I'm sure that they would. So there's no problem with that at all, mate. And straight up, well, I'm going to thank you from the bottom of my heart, but it's already coming through the chat panel as well. Thanks for sharing. What I love about it, and we've only chatted a couple of times before doing this, is I love your passion. I think that was one of the things that I just grabbed from just chatting to you. Your love of photography, but the great thing about it, obviously, you've got something that you love with the wrestling, and you've, like you said, you've pulled that through to keep you motivated, to create, to move your creativity on, to better yourself. But now ultimately as well, you've turned it into your business. As somebody just put, I loved your rant, so don't worry about it. So that's fantastic. So yeah, mate, thank you so much. I know we've got a question, so people please stay with us. We'll happily stay, and I will ask
Yeah,
them all as
as
proper.
long as you need for questions, that's not a problem.
Brilliant. As James said, he's got his slide there. I'll rub the screen back in a moment, but James is talking at the Society's convention in January. He's doing the Anatomy of the Family photo shoot on the 23rd of January, and then shooting in small spaces on the 24th. And as he's already said, he's hoping to have some of his rest of friends. So definitely, if you want to, well, you've seen what he can do in such a small space, so get that hands-on, get your places booked on those masterclasses, so you don't miss out. But we'll share all that information, as I said, on our Photographer Academy Facebook page. You can find out all the listings for that. So James, I think the best thing for me to do really is just go from the top of the list down. They're not in any particular order, so we may jump around a little. But
Yep.
I'll so when you've talked about it, but when you started out, how was it sort of, how did you best get your name out there?
Oh, good question. It initially started from what I learned from being made redundant from my insurance job was that they actually had experts coming, so it's quite a big sort of company. So they didn't just make you redundant, lay you off, and then let you go. They actually brought experts in, sort of talk you through the procedure of writing your CV and doing all that. So I just took that from that experience I had from that, and they said, well, first of all, just draw up a list of everyone that you know, and then just work out, okay, so who do they know, and who can they, and can you get them in for a business, or can they offer you an access into another business, into another way. At the time, for me, when I started my business, I ran a running club for the local gym. So I literally, and I knew the manager really well, and because I was running the running club for free, I kind of felt he owed me one. So I just went down there and sort of said, look, can I have a meeting? I'm starting off this business. You just have to take my word for it. I'm quite good at it. Can we do something with your members? He introduced me to the dance school, so we'd get like a dance school every year. We do their Christmas show, which would bring in a load of money. Occasionally I'd do open days at the dance school where the kids could just have their photograph taken as part of the dance school, and then that leads on to, hey, we're going to do a portrait open day here, and then you just get access that way. And you make sure as well that every client that comes to see you, they have an incentive to invite someone else to come and see you. It's really hard initially to sort of charge for sessions, and like I said, I mean, I'm not an advocate either way, whether you have to charge or whether you want to do it for free. But I would, I would just make sure that the clients that you have got, the people that you do know, make sure they have a really good incentive either to get something free from their session or to get their mates something for free to come and see you again. Word of mouth is just, it's just still the absolute best form of lead generation, in my opinion.
Brilliant, great advice, mate. I talked briefly at the beginning. You talked that you're shooting with, I know, your Canon and your Olympus. So somebody sort of just jumped in there that they're actually using the sort of the Fuji equivalent. I think they've got an XT or an X Pro or something
Yes.
like that. What are your feelings and your thoughts over full frame and half frame? Do you know, is there an advantage to full frame? What do you feel there?
Not really. I mean, I've got no sponsor. I've got no one to annoy. I've worked with the. I mean, I work with the full frame just because I kind of convinced myself when I first got a 5D that I was getting better quality out of it than I was getting out of my 7D. Then my 5D broke down, like I said, a couple of weeks back, and I've had to go back to my 7D. And I must admit, the quality for me isn't there in terms of sharpness. Just my personal opinion. But the 5D was so old, I can't really tell the difference anymore now. I'm shooting on the Mark III, I like it. But the sharpness out of that OMD, out of that, and I bought an EM10. I bought the entry level one. I didn't even buy the pro one. I bought the EM10, the real proper, budget. And I use that when I go to wrestling shows. I take that, and it's so sharp. And that's on the kit lens. My advice, always shoot with what you're comfortable with.
Agreed completely.
I don't care whether Nikon or Canon's better. It doesn't bother me. But I know that I can work a Canon blindfolded, and I know that when I need to change settings on it quickly, then I can do it quickly and look professional. Yeah. So yeah, no real thoughts either way. But I would, I tend to err towards full frame.
We're of the same boat here. We're Canon users, but like yourself, we've got no allegiance to them. We just happen to be Canon users. But we adopted the Fuji. Somebody showed us the Fuji sort of mirrorless cameras. We've got a couple of X Pro runs floating around the studio. And you're right, the quality's there. So I think I think it's been proven. I also saw a great article, I can't remember who it was, but an Olympus user who was asked the exact question about full frame and half frame and everything. And he showed a panel of images that were all from the Olympus classed with whatever he was shooting, Nikon, and the quality was almost identical. So I think it's what, it's what you're, like you nailed it, mate. It's what you're comfortable with. We had quite a few questions come through early on when you were talking about the studio and presenting, and you were talking about, you mentioned about Animoto and so on. It was interesting, as we know, we've got some people with us from over the pond, and somebody from the US has said that in America they found that the sort of first preview, the first sort of sales preview, they are tending to go back to 5x7 prints in mats. In like an album. So are you purely projecting? I know we're advocates of projecting here, James. Is that what you do?
Yeah, we project onto the wall. We project onto a screen. Yeah.
Yeah, Well, we haven't since we've been projecting. We haven't adopted any kind of preview album or anything like that.
No, we have a little funny thing called a hand brag album, which is it houses sort of 4x4 prints. And it's just a way, we give it away free, to be honest, because it doesn't cost us much to make. I think it costs us about £22 to make, and we give it away free with anyone who spends over something like 750 quid.
Fair
But it's
play.
just a way that instead of them, because when someone shows you an image on your phone, when was the last time you actually looked at it and sort of took it in? You look politely at it and go, yeah, that's nice. But this handbag album goes in ladies' handbags. It's just big enough, so they can bring it out in a nice little presentation box. And I got this from, I'll tell you where I got this. My firstborn kid was used for a seminar, Hayden. He was used for a seminar when he was 18 months old. And one of the delegates took a picture of him with my son while we were shooting, whatever, it was just there. And then they sent it through to me in a nice folder. And my heart, honestly, skipped about 3 beats when I opened the package because I wasn't expecting it. But it was something, if they'd have emailed me that photo, wouldn't have given a stuff. But because it was printed, I was just like, oh my God, that's gorgeous. I've got to have that big. So we're trying to encourage as much as possible in our studio to get printed images into people's hands and a nice presentation box that people can put in their handbag, do a lunch with their mates and go, hey, look what my guy gave me. Then we get recommendations.
Yeah, completely with you on that. That's exactly how we work here as well. Absolutely. So again, a couple of sort of general questions about the studio photography. What would you say is your largest prints that your clients want? What's sort of the average print? Is there a size?
Average size of canvases and prints is about 20x16. Most people, when they want prints only, most people go 7x5s because they've got these collection frames that they can put them in. But what's popular at the moment is photo walls, where they get an eclectic mix of frames with different sizes. So they'll sort of they're all different sizes, and then go and buy their own frames from them and then do their own little photo wall. You'll see it on the staircase of the US comedy Modern Family from Phil Dunphy's house. They've got a photo wall going down their staircase. That's the idea.
Brilliant. Okay, so going back to your small space, and obviously you've mentioned earlier that I presume that your clients view their images in your studio space as well, do they, James?
They do.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
So the question came in then. So when you're showing the clients your products, do you have them? Because it's such a small space, are you showing them framed products as well as albums?
Yes, we got framed products. What you couldn't see from the photo. Are you still on my screen?
We still are seeing your screen, Bed, yeah.
Yeah. All right, hang on. Right. So what you can't see from my photo here is that right behind where I'm stood here is basically I'm stood right up against a wall, my back to the wall. Along that wall is all wall art. So there's all canvases, acrylics, blocks, all kinds of things there, framed images. I have like a standard 30x20 and a 20x16 hard mount print and canvas, so that when they're deciding between sizes, I'll bring that canvas up against the wall here where it's projecting and project the image onto it, so they can see what a 30x20 looks like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
So they physically see the product and they go, well, this is what we will be producing for you, rather than speculating and getting a tape measure out. So yeah, that's what we do.
Brilliant. What's the average turnaround from shoot to presentation to the client?
I can do it. I can do it I can spend an hour on it and get them back within the hour. I tend to just book them in for the same time next week because it's bump to baby. They normally have like the same sort of schedule week in, week out.
Yeah.
So they'll sort of say, well, let's have a look next week, and then give them that. But it takes I would say it takes about 15 minutes to delete the images, another 45 to process them and color correct them and just change everything, and then this Animoto takes 5 minutes just to upload them, shuffle them around, put a music on, done.
Yeah, it sounds like same process we do, mate. Spot on there.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we've got that. Okay, so a couple of questions came through because obviously you were talking a lot about Facebook, especially with the portrait of the wrestler, and
Yes.
obviously you were allowing people to share use your images, so kind of effectively giving them away.
Yes.
Obviously, you were quite an established photographer in your portrait business before you did this project. A few questions were, if you're giving the images away, how are you paying the bills? But I think you also did very well explain that how it has sort of become full cycle. So as much as you've given them away, there are the benefits to it, and of course now you've been able to sort of done full circle and you're selling the prints and turning that
This,
around.
yeah, the whole purpose behind this is how, like, to start yourself in a rut, how to get yourself out of a rut. I mean, but if you've been doing it for a while, so I wouldn't ever suggest that you start a business plan with an 18-month strategy behind you to start making money in 18 months' time, when you've got bills to pay. I'm fortunate that we do have the bump to baby thing sort of coming through, so that we could sort of like pay it. But I mean, for anyone who's still like, the nuts and bolts of it are that the week before we submitted our first fellowship panel last October, we had a figure that we had to make by the end of that month to keep going, because we'd spent so much time and money on the project. We got ourselves down to a really precarious situation. So it is that labour of love thing. When I was starting, I did my associateship, which is the level below, and we just used clients to sort of come in, and then we would sort of do a preview and sell them the prints from that, or at least get them in for a complimentary print, but then they could purchase other prints. But then as soon as you passed your associateship, I didn't really want the panel anymore, so I just sold it back to them. So immediately you're selling it back for the price of a printed 20 by 16 on board, and then you're making your money back.
Brilliant, mate. Okay, you mentioned a couple of times, and I think there was just a little bit misunderstood, that you referred to you rubbed a technique that you referred to from Rankin. I believe it
Yes.
was the backlighting, isn't it? So somebody just got a little bit confused.
No, it wasn't a technique. No,
Right?
it wasn't a technique. It's a modifier. So it's like let me get it. Hang on. It's about 10 inches. No, it must be an 8-inch. It's an 8-inch like silver reflector dish that you put on the end of an Elinchron light.
Oh, a deflector cap. Deflector.
Deflector cap.
Yeah.
But on the end of it, instead of a grid or anything like that, we made an elasticated white opaque cover.
If you want to, James, you could turn your webcam on and show them. It should work.
Can I?
Yeah, let's try it. I'll tell you when you're there. You're on screen now, mate.
I've got to go and get it. Hang on.
Okay.
Oh, this is professional.
That's my fault. I've made you run around the studio. Look.
This is terrible. Oh God, where's it gone? I will get it in a minute, but no. Hit me another question. Oh, here it is. Got it. Right, here. All right, so it's there.
I love that. That was it's a shame. It's a real shame that the webinar doesn't record the webcam, because I would love to have shared that.
So look, my wife made this. It's starting to fall apart a little bit. But right, so the story is this. Right, here's the story for anyone who's interested. Rankin did a thing called Rankin Live in London, in Brick Lane, and you could go and either apply to be a model of his, or to just go and view him shoot live. And we thought that'd be a good outing for our photography team at the time, so we did it. And we went out there and we walked past all these galleries of all these amazing prints, sort of 50 inches high and all that kind of stuff. And we waited in the queue, got to the end, and we found, as you walk into the studio, you see like a load of hairstylists, then a load of makeup team, and then like wall-to-wall sort of wardrobe department, and then there's a guy holding a light over here, there's a guy moving the background over there, there's 3 people sat at computers over there, there's a guy literally holding his camera, and then the subject would come in, and Rankin's nowhere to be seen, right? And the guy holding the camera would just sort of take some photos and sort of go like that, and then Rankin would waltz out of this little room, go like that, click, job done, and then walk back out and have his coffee again. So it was like watching The Wizard of Oz. It was like, oh, you pull back the curtain, it's just like, oh my God. But he used this light. It's just like a single light source. So yeah, and it's just got this thing around the front, and it's good for doing sort of like a hard light portraiture, really. It's nice. I like it.
Brilliant.
Hard soft light.
So yeah, thanks for the.
I'll turn that webcam off now so it doesn't go so silly.
No worries.
Right?
So we got there on that one. Okay, so you talked also a couple of times about your kicker light. Are you using any diffusers or modifiers on those?
No, but occasionally I will get my wife or someone who's with the person in the studio. If I've got another pair of hands, if not, I'll just hang it from a tripod. But occasionally I'll drag a reflector across the side of it, if that makes sense, so I don't get any spill into the camera. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I also try and shoot that on as long a lens as possible, because the wider you get, the more likely you are you're going to get lens flare into the lens, which
Any
causes
any
problems.
particular quick ways that sorry in the post process, especially with the Restern images, were there any sort of go-to effects within Photoshop or processing that you went to straight away?
Not really. It's not really. It's just developing the raws, having a control over it, and then when you use a little bit of structure, a little bit of contrast, going into photo adjustments, shadows, and highlights. You can do little tweaks in there that just give you a style, and then when you record a pattern on that, you can literally just hit your F key, and then you get the same every image. So that's pretty much it's just trying to, because when you put a panel up for judging, it's very important they've all got the same tone, the same contrast, the same depth, and you have to process them the same way in order for that to happen.
Leading on from that, then about obviously the panel, did you have a preferred focal length for the images you submitted?
I was using I used the 50mm prime lens a lot, but then I dropped it on a corporate job and it stopped focusing properly. You're getting so much honesty out of me today. I tell you what.
That's what we
So
love.
unprofessional.
That's what we
But
love. No, I love it.
the one I used for almost the entirety of the project was the 24 to 105 f4L series lens, because I had a lot of a variety of that. And I always remember my art teacher teaching me at night school that 50mm represents what the eye sees. So anything wider than that will be distorted. So it tended to be 50mm and up.
Brill. You mentioned, I think it was at the Print Foundry. Is that the people that you use for your prints?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Print Foundry, they're awesome.
So somebody was asking, with your panel, what paper did you choose and why? So I guess obviously your answer is the Print Foundry and just.
Yeah, I think it was a Hanamula photo rag.
So it was just obviously you went and
Oh,
looked what they did, found what suited you the best, reflected your images, that sort of. Are you there, James? Sorry, I might have lost you a little bit.
yeah, we literally got samples coming backwards, and then you get the same. Hello, hello, hello. I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I
I can hear you.
think we've got a slight delay. That's all, mate.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, no, we would send 2 images to the printers, and they would come back to us with the same image printed 3 times on 3 different samples of paper.
Brilliant. I'm with you.
Mm.
Okay, this is quite a good question. With regards to obviously the fellowships that you got, did you go straight for your fellowships?
Good question. No, with the MPA, I took the path of L to A to F. The A was, I think the A is probably the hardest one, because like you can't break rules, because then they just look at the panel and go, he doesn't understand the rules. But you can't stick to the rules, because then they go, well, it's not an associateship because he's not pushing himself and breaking the rules. I always remember being judged for when I worked for the national franchise. We used to go to their head office up at Alta. It was a venture, and they used to say to me, "Oh, that nose has broken the cheekbone. That's broken the rules. Oh, -5." And then someone else would come up and they go, "Oh, that nose has broken the cheekbone. Brilliant. You've broken the rules. +10." He's like, "What?"
Excellent.
But yeah, no, and with the societies, I just went straight for fellowship, because I'd got it with the MPA. They very graciously allowed me to submit. I did a couple of tweaks to the panel. I changed a couple of images in the panel actually, because I wasn't happy with them. But yeah.
Brilliant. This question came through right at the beginning. Well, it wasn't. Well, it is a question actually. I was hanging on to it because I was going to finish with it, but I presume last Sunday, James, you must have been somewhere where there was some judging going on.
I was at the awards, yes.
Oh, there we go.
Well
Because Jules was at the awards and she was hoping to meet you. I don't know if she did, but she was fortunate enough to win the fine art category. So congratulations. Her question was
someone else who won.
As a question, her question was, as an artist, do you still sometimes doubt yourself? And if you do, how do you get over it?
Oh God. Oh, this is like, this is yesterday in a nutshell. God, I could not get my head right yesterday. No, all the time. Like, all the time, because you just see there's so much access to stuff like online, and sometimes you see stuff and it just blows you away. Sometimes you see stuff and it really frustrates you because it gets attention that it frankly doesn't deserve. And then sometimes you see stuff and you just think, I can't even imagine how that person imagined that, and that my stuff isn't. I went into both fellowship judgings thinking I was going to fail, both of them. I was convinced in the first one because no one had given you any validation, but that's only natural, and it's a hard thing to sort of overcome, and you do go through these crises of confidence, especially when you're working on your own. Ultimately, the person I'm trying to please is me, but I don't have that grasp on it. So the person I'm trying to please is my customer. I get the right reaction out of them, and if I get the right reaction out of my mums who see their babies, and if they keep crying, and they keep telling their friends about me, then you must be doing like quite a good job. But it is seeking validation you can say it's an ego thing or whatever. I think it's just a thing where you just try and keep relevant, and you're just trying to sort of, reaffirm what you're doing is right and of a good enough quality. Jules's shot was lovely, by the way. The one that she won the award was amazing.
Excellent.
Beautiful composition.
Brilliant.
Really lovely. You should check it out if you can find her online.
And she's just replied, thank you for the answer. There we go. Brilliant.
My pleasure.
Good question. I suppose you talked about then, we got around towards the end where now you're selling the prints of the wrestlers. Do the wrestlers get paid as part of your sale?
No, because it's kind of like the way it works now is that anyone who has a studio shoot pays me for the time in the studio. We deal with digital images with them, so technically it doesn't cost us anything. And if digital images are out there, more wrestlers are going to come and see me. The business is that business is reciprocal. Wrestlers' characters change. So if they have a different character next year, or they just want an updated portfolio, they come back to me again and they pay me again for the studio time. All of this is long-term plan. Every shoot that comes in goes on a hard drive, and a few years down the line, we're going to release a book. And the book is the big thing. The book is big picture. So the prints sort of justify it. The charging for the time just reaffirms the professionalism and the quality and the relationship that you have with the client so that no one takes the mickey out of you. But the long, big picture is doing this book and making sure that's right, and then we got to learn a whole different thing. It's a whole different ballpark, and that's where my wife comes in. I'm literally the monkey with the camera. She's the marketing genius.
Excellent, brilliant, mate. Okay, we're getting there, mate. We're getting there. Just a couple left.
It's all right. No rush. No rush.
Oh, referring to your ranking diffuser, was it made from a fire-resistant material? If it isn't, it should be. So yes.
I think I cut it from an old softbox that I wasn't using anymore.
Fair enough, but you can get them actually. I think actually Adencrom do make those, so they refer to them as shower caps, or Lastalite do. But
Something
yes,
like that.
everything we have like that in the studio, definitely fire resistant. Don't get them on the bulbs. We're not promoting that in any way.
I once, here's the thing. I once, coming back from a job, I tucked my reflector, my big 1.5 meter reflector. I folded it up and tucked it inside one of the soft boxes and put it in the car. And then the next day, I just fired up my lights for the shoot, forgot it was in there, and caused a mini studio fire because the bulb had burnt through the reflector.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Told you, I'm telling you too much. I'm telling you too much.
No, these are the true things that we've all experienced, mate. We've been there, we've done that, and I'm not saying we wouldn't do it again, but we'll try not to. But fire resistant, definitely. Okay, so we are down to the last couple, mate. Obviously, you've got such a small studio. With regards to your clients, do you have a separate changing room? Or you have an area that they can,
Oh, good question. Yeah, we do. We're fortunate enough to have quite a large bathroom come toilet come changing area downstairs. We've changed it, so we've decorated things on the walls so that there are places for them to hang their clothes. We make sure that the place is absolutely spotless. Every morning it's absolutely spotless and essentially like a workable toilet. But it's quite a big area, so they can sort of change in there, and there's a lock in there for them to use as well.
Brilliant. Well, I just want to sort of, the last one isn't a question as such. This is just came through on the chat panel. It says, thank you, James. Great info. Gave me some great ideas, which I definitely will get started on. Thanks for the tips about the attitude and passion, which I hopefully have, but need reminding of from time to time. And I think that applies to all of us as photographers. I'm lucky enough, like you, James, that I photograph what my love. I do live music, but I don't make a living from it. My job at the Photography Academy is what I make a living from it. But it does push me. And that's where I still find my love of photography. And I can speak for Mark here at the studio. Every month, the team just tell him to shoot. Just pick a project,
Yeah.
get a model, whatever he wants to shoot, away from the photography academy, just to get yourself fired up again. So that the practicing and the try and the experimenting, doing something different you haven't done before, the learning, always take time to learn. I mean, that's why we created the photography academy. That you're always, it doesn't matter how big of or how much there is always something to learn, and that was the passion and the idea behind what we do. James, thank you for joining us today, mate. I'm thrilled that you ran over because every minute of it was worth it. I loved your rant, and so did everybody else who was online with us. So again,
when I come back, I'll just do an hour of ranting.
Yeah, we do that Mark does that all the time. We do that all the time. So you definitely fit in well here, mate. I'm looking forward to meeting you in January at the convention because we've not met face to face. I think we're going to have loads in common. Especially, I almost cried yesterday watching the Star Wars trailer as well. So
Good man.
So we're both in the same boat there. My tickets are bought. I have the day off. It's
I'm midnight.
I couldn't get midnight. I was gutted. I couldn't get midnight. Mark, myself, and Debbie, we are taking a day off work, and we've got tickets for
Good for you. It's going to be awesome.
IMAX lunchtime, so I can't wait. Mate, so thank you for joining us. Obviously, I'll speak to you before then. We've talked about doing some more stuff together. I'd love to explore that with you. James, thanks again. Thanks everyone for joining us. We're going now. Enjoy your day. Take care, mate. Bye now.